Welcome again, episode 9, and I guess after episode 8 you were expecting this episode to be on the Albert Barracks, but it's going to be actually on Fort Britomart and Britomart Point, because Fort Britomart was constructed before the Albert Barracks, and one leads into the other, and to give the whole thing a bit of a context, I need to talk about Fort Britomart first. So if we look at the picture on the screen here, this is an 1855 drawing of Auckland. Auckland is 15 years old, so it's quite a bit of development. But if we quickly look at this, we can see we have here Britomart Point, and as it gently slopes on down to the sea, to this cliff here, we can see the buildings. So basically Fort Britomart starts around about here. Over this ground here we have, this is where Emily Place is today, except Emily Place is further down because they've quarried half it away. But sat St Paul's Church, which was quite a landmark. It was built in 1841. Up here we have Princess Street, here we have Kitchener Street, this is Albert Hill, 1855, Albert Barracks are constructed, just out of picture. This is Shortland Crescent coming down here, we have Queen Street coming along here, and this is Fort Street here. So that's just giving us our bearings as to where we are. But in 1814 there was nothing. Okay, so this fort was still to be constructed. In fact, Hobson had come over on the HMS Herald under the captaincy of Captain Nias, and these two guys argued. The amount of stress that was created between the two was huge. Anyway, the Treaty of Waitangi was signed. Then people were sent around New Zealand to get signatures. And during this time, the Herald, HMS Herald, was relieved by the HMS Britomart. And the Britomart's captain was Captain Stanley, and obviously he was highly regarded by Hobson as opposed to Nias, because nothing around Auckland is called Nias. But we've got Stanley Point, we've got a whole bunch of other bits and pieces with Stanley in them. So Stanley came over and was he also brought over the 100 troops that was sent over from New South Wales by Governor Gipps, and these were the men who actually started building near the end of 1840. They started constructing the Point Britomart, Fort Britomart. So things went moderately well during the next 4 years, between 1840 and basically most of the Fort Britomart was built by 1841. So and across this area here, across the front of Fort Britomart, was an earthworks, which was the main part. It had a trench and an abutment, which was used to defend against any attackers that would be coming down Princess Street or around that area. And then it also had cannons and guns pointing out to sea and pointing out to the Waitemata Harbour. Let's get our bearings of where this was. So here we are. The picture you just saw was someone sitting over here sketching back towards Point Britomart. Here is St Paul's up in the air there, and the way I've shown Britomart Point is like this, but in fact of course it tapered on up to the church, as we saw in this photo here. and it also tapered down. Unfortunately, I can't do that on Google Earth. I've just got a big clunky block there. But if we put in the 3D buildings of what we'd actually see today, this is what we would see. So, because most of these things are actually gone, if I just turn this around here, we get a bit of a look in here. Okay. Now, something that's really interesting is this sloped up to here, as I mentioned, and this sloped further down to the edge of the cliff here. But if you're ever in Custom Street, oh God, I didn't want to do that. If ever you are in Custom Street here, so and you're looking down here, okay, and there's this hotel here, and one of the things that they've reckoned is that around about the 8th floor, now there's numbers on this building here going from 1 up to obviously more than 8, but at the 8th, where the number 8 is the height at which Fort Britomart was in the old days, sloping down to the sea and sloping up to Emily Place. So if you're ever in Custom Street, have a look at that, have a look up down that building and think, my goodness, that was a huge area. Now if we also look at here, so imagine this slopes back up to here. We've got St. Paul's. St. Paul's is at the end of Princess Street. This is Princess Street here. This part of Princess Street didn't exist. This part of Princess Street did. And we had government offices, government buildings, all sorts of things. Just over the back of these buildings here, you can just see it. We had the government house. In those days, it was a wooden government house where the governor lived. It got burnt down, I think, 1856 or something. Can't remember. Anyway, that's when they constructed the one that now exists there. So Bunbury built those, and between 1840 and 1844, everything was peaceful, and then Hongi Heki didn't like that British authority had over Maori affairs, so he started chopping down the flagstaff up in Russell or Kororareka. Now, 11th of March 1845, Hongi sacks Kororareka. The troops that were up there and the civilians all retreat out to the ships that are in the bay, and then the ships start bombarding the Russell, and the Maoris thought that was most unsporting. Normally, if you won a battle, then you're open to the spoils. The fact that the ships opened fire on them was taken as very bad form by the Maori. You get a lot. Anyway, suffice to say, news got back to Auckland that, Kororareka had been sacked, and everyone in Auckland, there was about 2,500 people, 3,000 people in Auckland at that stage. They were all horrified, and a lot of them were terrified. Don't forget, tales of cannibalism and all this sort of jazz still floated around. But a lot of them just sold their property for what it was worth, what they could get for it, and jumped on the first boat out of there. In reality, the Ngāti Whātua of Auckland and the Waikato tribes under the supreme leadership of Pōtatau Te Wherowhero had basically given a commitment to Auckland. It came under their mana, under their protection. So, in essence, it was that which prevented anyone from up north coming down to attack Auckland. There was no way they were going to do that. Absolutely no way. But, and when you look back on these things in history, it's easy to be brave and think what a bunch of fools they were. However, at the time it was really serious. A lot of the civilian population were called out to do sentry duty, and various things were done. And Anyway, Governor Grey replaced Fitzroy in 1845, and he was the one that really took on Honeyheki. And the last battle fought in the Flagstaff Wars was at Ruapekapeka in December of 1845, where the British troops, which now numbered about 1,500 in New Zealand, they basically brought that war to an end, and things would not get heated until the 1860s, when further land wars would raise their heads. So Fort Britomart was built, was added to in 1845, when with the sacking of Kororareka and the Great Fair that occurred in Auckland. Up on Albert Hill, they started building some blockhouses and various other bits and pieces for the defence, as well as strengthening Fort Britomart. They also built a fort on Hobson Street called Fort Lagar, but things settled down, and the story of Albert Barracks starts from around about this point. So just to finish off on Fort Britomart and Point Britomart, Fort Britomart remained in a commissioned fashion until around about the early 1870s, when it was decommissioned, and Point Britomart was basically the start. It was quarried away. The beginning of the quarrying of Point Britomart started around about 1872, 1873, and went through to about 1885. So that kind of brings us, let's have a quick look at some of the photos of Fort Britomart, which is there. So this is, I said this is 1855. Here's one taken in 1860s, and this is looking from St. Paul's, out looking north from St. Paul's down into Point Britomart, Fort Britomart. And you have the barracks. You've got the earthworks here with cannons pointing out to sea. They had some down this far side as well. The front was, originally it was earth, but then it was converted into volcanic rock. But it couldn't hold a large number of people, these barracks. So hence the reason for Albert Barracks. Here are some of the cannons at Fort Britomart, pointing out through the gaps. Huge things. Here's here are some of the stockpiles of cannonballs for the different calibers you can see here. But my gosh, you can imagine the damage. I mean, one is you can't figure out how the hell they'd hit the thing at a distance. I mean, it'd be more luck than good management to hit anything. But if you did, imagine one of those things. Shh, destruction, big time. Here's another cannon. You got Mount Victoria in the background and North Head looking out over the point. Let's make that a bit bigger. Amazing, eh? Obviously some sort of parade day in the barracks. You got the stone building and a couple of other buildings and the sloping down to earth. Got the mobile. It looks like there's a number of cannons that they, mobile cannons that could have been taken, probably used for the land wars. This is a photo of Custom Street, looking east. Queen Street is just here, going through there. So we're in Custom Street West, looking east, and here we have Point Britomart. And if you look today, you'll see that hotel that I was talking about, and number 8 on that hotel is pretty much around about here. Okay, and these are the buildings. This here is you can't see St. Paul's, which is further behind these buildings here. This here is the bell tower for the fires. If there was a fire, this bell would be rung, and everyone jumps into gear, jumps into action. and goes off and does their thing. So again, up there is about the 8th floor on that hotel. That's there. This is a lovely photo. This shows you Fort Britomart again. Here are the barracks, Queen Street coming out here. I'm not sure of the date of this, but this is looking from Smales Point across to Fort Britomart. This is after the fort had been decommissioned. You can see St Paul's here, sloping down here. They've cut a big groove here in order to get access to the other side. This is actually St Paul's, taken from looking south back towards St Paul's. This is Princess Street here. The Northern Club would be up on the corner here, and various other buildings. This is one of the. This is the quarrying away of Fort Britomart. This shows you one of the cuttings. And here you can see the remaining parts of where the guns used to be here. This is showing you how they did it. They used explosives, of course, but once the explosives had broken everything up, it was pick and shovel time. Horses, man. So it was 1872, around about to 1887, about 15 years of quarrying to get rid of most of Fort Britomart. So Fort Britomart, a lot of it's gone now, a lot of it's gone. You can see cuts here where they're going to put explosives, or they just break off each section. Here we have dear old St Paul's on its lonesome. They were actually endeavouring to save, they weren't going to quarry away St Paul's. It was supposed to stay there and be, you know, but one of the issues is when they quarried away all this stuff here, they left too steep a face here. And what happened was stuff kept slipping down onto the road, and they realised that the angle that they'd made the slope was too steep, so therefore they had to cut it all the way back here. And in order to do that, they had to get rid of dear old St Paul's, which is a real shame. So, yeah, so St Paul's went and it's gone. And where St Paul's was, so Emily Place is down around about here now, and there's a gradual slope from the end of Princess Street down to not sea level, but road level. And Emily Place is kind of around about this level here. And this is showing you pretty much it's mostly gone now. So, Fort Britomart, a wonderful part of Auckland history, and Fort Britomart after 1845 was considered to be not sufficient enough for Auckland's needs and the growing population of Auckland, and so Albert Barracks was created, and that's going to be in my next episode. Or the one after, you know. Anyway, that's it from me. That's a Kiwi Codger, and I'll see you all later, and take it easy.